In Stars in Time is an amazing indie RPG that's dropping late in the year, and it's been a long time since I felt this emotional while playing a video game. I'm CGDannyB, and this is my review of In Stars in Time. So you might be thinking, well Danny, what is In Stars in Time? Well, let me tell you. So In Stars in Time is a story-rich party-based RPG where everything's in black and white. But in this story, our hero Sifrin is trapped in an everlasting time loop where they have to watch their friends die over and over again. And I'm sure that's great for their mental health. But your ultimate goal is to create a better future for your friends while also saving this country from an evil Time Lord who's trying to freeze everything in place. Although at first glance the game seems relatively simple, it's tethered to well thought out characters, a satisfying gameplay loop, and dialogue that somehow manages to be both intelligent and goofy at the same time, all while tugging ever so tightly on your heartstrings throughout the game's narrative. This is Sifrin, the shy, depressed, and forgetful party leader, and your playable character for the game. You wake up one morning lying in the middle of an open field until Mirabelle, your team housemate and slash healer, comes to wake you up. Because today is the last day before your party takes on the evil king threatening these lands, and there's a lot of preparations to take care of, including rounding up the rest of your party. There's Bonnie, the wild over-the-top kid of the group, who's in charge of one thing, making sure there's enough snacks for everybody along the way. Next there's Odile, the elder member of the group. She's in charge of research, history, and reading all the boring books that no one else cares to check out. And lastly there's Isabeau, the golden retriever of the group, who's in charge of punching things and caring about his friends afterwards. By the way, Isabeau is easily my favorite character in the game, and I think it's because he reminds me so much of Mirio from My Hero Academia. The story of In Stars in Time takes place towards the end of our hero's adventure, where conversations and character interactions show us that these people have definitely been traveling together for a while, and today they're reaching the climax of their big adventure. And this is cleverly shown by having your party members already being around level 45 at the start of the game. Once your party heads inside the House of Change, you'll come face to face with the Sadness, these ghost-like creatures that you'll have to fight to reach the top of the tower. But something you'll learn very quickly is that Sifrin's trapped in a time loop, where every time they die, they wake up in the middle of that same field where the whole game started, but with the memories of their last outing. Oh, and they're also the only one who remembers it. I know this all makes it sound like a roguelike, but it's really not. The time loop mechanic is certainly present as a main gameplay feature, but the game is definitely a well thought out RPG where the looping is more narratively driven. It's also kind of like a Metroidvania. Remember how Deathloop wasn't a roguelike, but the narrative was about going back in time? Well, In Stars in Time is similar in the way that you can go back and explore missed areas and look under places that you didn't know you could before. So even if it feels like you might not be making progress each loop, you most certainly are. The gameplay of In Stars in Time is very reminiscent of popular RPGs like the Mother series. You'll wander around the town of Dormont, asking random people about their lives, getting free items from townsfolk, or even heading to a magical statue to pray to the Change God to give your team power-ups. I can't lie, in the first hour or so of gameplay, I was a little turned off by the amount of dialogue I had to read. The tutorial area is very chatty, and for someone like myself, I definitely started to tune out after a while. Until the game introduces its own tuning out mechanic that allows you to fast forward through repeated conversations that you've heard before. And then I realized how meta this game was actually going to be, and that had me excited. As you explore the world, interacting with new people and gathering more information about this country, you'll be able to reset after each loop with newfound knowledge that'll further your progression and unlock new skills and equipment for your crew of misfits. Some of these items are typical stuff, like weapons and clothing, but a unique type of equipment you'll unlock are memories. These story progress based perks that allow you to buff your stats at the start of battle or add new attacks, also known as crafts, to your move list. And these are just the early game memories. There's much more to talk about, but that would be spoilers, and we're not doing that here. When you unlock each and every memory, the game kindly informs you of what memory you just received and lets you know that you'll always remember that. It's kind of this really nice and uplifting moment that really sets in stone that you just hit a milestone in the game. As you explore the king's house, you'll need to check each and every room to find the missing keys to reach the next floor. At first, this could be a little confusing, but once you found that key, Sif will remember where it is and that section of the room will sparkle to remind you to get that item each run. But you better get used to backtracking, because sometimes Sif isn't the most observant individual. So you may stumble across a door that requires you to bring an item from before that you never even noticed. Now you have to reset and actually pick up that item this time. And don't worry, again, this is a narrative thing, so you didn't actually miss the item, the game just made you miss it. I guess unless you did actually miss it, then maybe you weren't reading hard enough. Yeah, I'm sure you'll figure it out. The combat of In Stars in Time may look very similar to other RPGs, but something that makes these fights a little different is the rock, paper, scissors mechanics. Like, quite literally, rock, paper, scissors. Every status you encounter, as well as your own heroes, specialize in either rock, paper, or scissors. So as each encounter starts, you'll have to look closely at your opponent's hands to see what sign they're holding up. This will tell you which member of your party is the most effective during this fight and where to pump all of your attack buffs into. It's almost like playing actual rock, paper, scissors with your little siblings, but they are determined to win by using just the one sign, so you just make sure to pick the one that beats them every time. Also, to the side of the screen, you'll see the order of which type of attacks you've used most recently. If you can manage to stack 5 of the same type of attack in a row, you'll get a jackpot attack. a move where all of your party members attack at once, doing massive damage while also healing any status effects and reviving any down allies all at the same time. So if you're a brute like me and you don't like to take a turn to heal, aim for the jackpot attack. And of course there's various boss battles that mix up the formula a bit, but I think the combat's a perfect balance of mixing up the typical click attack do damage formula that a lot of RPGs do by adding a fun and whimsical twist to the battles. Now if only the whole game can be whimsical like that. Remember when I mentioned being emotional during this game? Yeah, we're about to get to that part. So before you start the game, In Stars in Time gives you a content warning, essentially saying, hey, there's some deep stuff in this game, so please be aware of what's coming your way. Now, I won't get into the meaty details here because then you're forced to go play the game yourself, but there were a handful of moments that had me sitting in the darkness of my office, sniffling and whimpering like a child who lost his favorite blanket, but more manly than that. But In Stars in Time covers a list of different topics, including mental illness, trauma, self-harm, and a lot more. The cast of this game struggles through a whole mess of different issues, like feeling unwanted, feeling the need to change for others, losing trust in those around you, self-doubt, anxiety, the discomfort of physical touch, and every moment when the music would cut and the feels would start to flow into the scene, I would cuddle up ready to bawl my eyes out over and over again. Because though I couldn't personally relate to every character's situation, I certainly had my moments of wanting to dive into the screen and hug these characters so they didn't feel sad anymore, or perhaps a supportive smirk in some characters' cases. But the game also features some far less emotional moments that are still just as impactful. For example, there's one room in the House of Change where Sif is constantly bumping into the countertop because of their lack of depth perception. Oh yeah, they're wearing an eye patch in case you missed that part. Now the first few times the party's gonna laugh at you for being clumsy and making weird noises, but later, your team's got your back and takes their turn beating the snot out of this countertop, teaching you not to mess with their fearless leader. Also, funny kinda related thing, I got stuck at a certain point in the game and was able to reach out to the developer Adrian for a bit of help while informing them of all of my tears. To then receive a message that said, you haven't even gotten to the parts where I'm sure most people will cry their hearts out. Yippee! And yes, I know Adrian, I did just sort of leak our DMs a little bit, but I think I got to one of the parts you're referring to, and how dare you? How dare you do this to me? And though I don't have many complaints, I think it's fair to note a few of the issues that I had during my playthrough of In Stars in Time. Now I know I already mentioned that it is super dialogue heavy, and though that fast forwarding mechanic is super useful, I know some people don't like a lot of reading in their video games, so I figured I'd give you that fair warning. Now the gameplay was nearly perfect from start to finish. The only glitches or errors I received was while fast forwarding through checkpoint dialogue, and getting some form of coding error that wouldn't allow me to progress. Luckily the save point was only a few minutes in a boss fight back, so it wasn't insanely detrimental to my progress, but still a bit annoying. I did take note that it only happened once on my desktop and perhaps 2 or 3 times while laying in my bed on my Steam Deck, but hey, it ran pretty damn well on Steam Deck otherwise. And it wasn't even overheating, so that's a pretty big plus. My final critique are the occasional spots of being lost and not really being sure how to progress. There is this really fun character that you can talk to who will give you hints about what to do next, but sometimes the hints just, oh man, maybe you should try to figure that out. Like, duh dude, that's why I came to you, help me. But these few gripes aside, I've got very little to complain about when it comes to my experience with In Stars in Time. To wrap things up, In Stars in Time is a beautiful experience full of emotions, both good and bad. But the story, characters, and events of this game are something that I think everyone who's capable of needs to experience. Thank you so much for checking out my review of In Stars in Time. If you want to pick up the game for yourself, I put the Steam link in the description below, but you can also pick it up on Nintendo Switch and PlayStation starting today. I am so glad I had the opportunity to play this magical game before my final Game of the Year video because I may have just found another one for my top 10. And now you've got the memory of this review, and you'll always remember that. Thank you for watching, be sure to subscribe for some more indie game content.